Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking some pretty dense historical notes and transforming them into a highly visual journey through medieval India's regional powerhouses. We're totally leaving those sprawling ancient empires in the rearview mirror to explore the dawn of some fierce, brilliant regional dynasties. These are the powers that literally reshaped the subcontinent.
Here's our map for today's journey. We'll start with the rise of regional powers, head down to South India for temples and navies, move over to Eastern India for faith and art, trek up to Northeast India to witness the Great Resistance, and finally wrap it all up with culture, economy, and architecture. Let's get into it.
Part 1. The rise of regional powers, looking way beyond those old empires.
You know, it's so easy to assume that when massive, centralized, ancient empires like the Guptas or Harshavardhana collapsed, civilization just paused, right? But actually, scratch that. The exact opposite happened. Their decline totally shattered this old myth of a historical dark age. Instead, it sparked a massive, vibrant explosion of regional identities. Suddenly, you've got these distinct political systems springing up out of nowhere. You have entirely new forms of specialized temple architecture quite literally reaching for the sky. And we see massive new maritime trade networks connecting India to the wider world. It wasn't a dark age at all. It was an era of intense, hyper-localized innovation.
Moving right along to Part 2, South India, an era of towering temples and massive navies. Now, these southern kingdoms, they were absolute titans of architecture and trade. Seriously, picture the Pallava dynasty carving magnificent rock-cut temples right out of the solid earth at Mahabalipuram. Then, you have the Rashtrakutas engineering the mind-boggling Kailasa temple. The Hoysalas, meanwhile, were innovating with soapstone, creating these incredibly intricate star-shaped platforms for their temples that look like giant puzzles. But honestly, perhaps the most dominant force in this entire era is the mighty Chola dynasty. Under powerhouses like Rajaraja I and Rajendra I, they didn't just build the iconic Brihadisvara temple. No, they expanded their maritime trade all the way to Southeast Asia and Arabia, officially emerging as the absolute strongest naval power in all of medieval India.
But here is the crucial point. Chola's strength wasn't purely military. They were smart. They empowered local citizens through this brilliant administrative framework. Because think about it, an empire that vast absolutely cannot survive if you're just micromanaging everything from the capital. Enter the Sabha system. This, paired with the Kudavalai system, where, get this, local committee members were actually elected by drawing palm leaves from a pot, created this incredibly robust network of village self-government. It meant that local administration was highly effective and, more importantly, deeply rooted right there in the community.
And this perfectly illustrates the dramatic, almost whiplash-inducing arc of the Vijayanagara Empire. Founded in 1336 by Harihara I and Bukkaraya I, it rises so rapidly to immense economic prosperity. By 1509, under its absolute greatest ruler, Krishnadevaraya, the empire hits its peak. We're talking incredible military success and brilliant literary patronage. But then, look right at the end of the timeline. The devastating Battle of Talikota in 1565 triggers a sudden, catastrophic decline. It is truly one of the most stunning rise and fall stories in all of history.
So, to understand exactly how Vijayanagara fielded such a massive, powerhouse military before that fall, we have to talk about the Nyankara system. This sophisticated administrative backbone was literally the secret sauce to their military might. It essentially ensured that local chiefs maintained both troops and funds for the Central Empire, which allowed them to consistently and effectively project power all across the Deccan Plateau. Okay, so with the South firmly established as this naval and architectural juggernaut, we have to naturally pivot our focus. What was happening simultaneously on the exact opposite side of the subcontinent, right over in the eastern river valleys? That brings us to Part 3, Eastern India, a hub of faith and art. Under founders like Gopala and great rulers like Dharmapala, the East became this massive, glowing beacon for Buddhist learning. While a lot of other regions were shifting their religious focus, the Pala Empire really stood out as major, dedicated patrons of Mahayana Buddhism. They poured serious resources into legendary institutions. We're talking the Nalanda and Vikramashila universities. But they weren't just academics either. They were absolute master artists. The distinct Pala School of Art produced these incredible bronze sculptures, intricate Buddhist paintings, and beautifully detailed palm leaf manuscripts. It's a real treasure trove.
Now, travel a bit further down the coast, and the landscape completely shifts. After the Pallas, the Sena dynasty came in and actually led a big revival of Brahmanism and a period of social conservatism.
But arguably the most visually spectacular legacy of the East, that belongs to the Eastern Ganga dynasty ruling over Odisha. These guys were the absolute masters of Kalinga architecture. They created these towering, curved spires known as Rekha de Lul structures, along with these massive, intricate assembly halls called Jagamohanas. And the absolute crown jewel of this era? No question, it's the magnificent Konark Sun Temple, commissioned by the famous ruler Narasimhadeva I. So, now that we've taken in the spiritual and artistic heights of the East, let's ask a pretty critical question about India's defensive borders. The Mughal Empire was expanding relentlessly during this time, so who was successfully holding the line up in the northeast? Let's dive into Part 4, Northeast India and the Great Resistance. The Ahoms built an incredibly strong, highly centralized administrative machine that would basically prove to be an impenetrable fortress against external invasions. Founded all the way back in 1228 by Sukafa, the Ahom kingdom in Assam didn't mess around with loose confederations. No way. They utilized highly specific, powerful official roles, like the Bar Patra Gohain and Burha Gohain, to keep the entire kingdom tightly unified and fiercely resilient. We really have to pause on this heroic climax for a second. Picture this, Lachit Borphukan leading the Ahoms to halt the massive Mughal war machine dead in its tracks. This is the absolute defining moment for the region's independence. In 1671, at the Battle of Saraighat, this brilliant Ahom commander delivered a crushing, decisive defeat to the Mughals. This victory is absolutely crucial because it ensured that Assam remained protected from Mughal control and successfully preserved its very distinct regional identity. But beyond their legendary military resistance, the Northeast also nurtured this beautiful literary and spiritual tradition that really brought the community together. Led by the great saint Shimanta Sankardev, the Assam Bhakti movement actively promoted Vaishnavism and deep devotion over rigid ritualism. Sankardev established satras. These are basically monasteries, and they became vibrant, thrumming hubs, not just for religion, mind you, but for Assamese literature and culture as a whole. And finally, Part 5, zooming out to look at culture, economy, and architecture. Okay, when we contrast all the distinct architectural identities we've just encountered side by side, the full mosaic becomes so incredibly clear. Down in the south, you have the sprawling Dravidian style with those massive temple complexes. Over in Odisha, you've got the towering, intricate Kalinga style. In the Deccan region, the Vaisaraya style acts as this beautiful hybrid, seamlessly blending northern and southern building techniques together. And then in Assam, there's that totally unique blend of temple and satra monastery traditions. Seeing it all mapped out like this really drives home the point that medieval India wasn't a monolith. It was a dynamic network of distinct, brilliant regional cultures. And of course, fueling all of those magnificent temples and armies was a diverse, roaring economic engine perfectly customized to the unique geography of each region. Agriculture was the universal backbone everywhere. Crops like rice, coconut, sugarcane, and spices were staples. But the trade routes? That's what really set them apart. South India leveraged its massive coastline to totally dominate maritime trade all the way from Arabia to Southeast Asia. Eastern India used its huge river systems for both riverine and sea trade. Meanwhile, North India looked to the land, trading extensively over the mountains with Tibet and Burma. Right, so if we distill this incredible era down to its absolute greatest hits, the legacy is just astounding. Need a quick recap? The greatest medieval navy? That's the Cholas. The most famous Vijayanagara ruler, Krishnadevaraya. The absolute pinnacle of Odisha temples, the Konark Sun Temple. The steadfast preservers of Buddhism in the East, the Pallas. The founder of the mighty Ahom kingdom, Sukafa. And the legendary commander who defeated the Mughals, Lachit Borphukan. Lock those in. As we wrap up this explainer, we've clearly seen how the fall of massive ancient empires definitely didn't lead to darkness. Instead, it led to incredible, vibrant regional innovation that laid the diverse cultural and economic foundations of the subcontinent we see today. So I want to leave you with this thought. When you look at the complex modern political and cultural map of India right now, how much of it is actually just a modern reflection of these fiercely independent medieval regional powerhouses? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating era with me.